Hello and welcome to the Copilot Connection.
We're here to share with you all the news, insights, and capabilities of the Microsoft Copilot ecosystem from across the entire Microsoft stack. I'm Zoe Wilson and I lead the Copilot business transformation practice across Accenture and Avanade. I'm an MVP for M365, a regional director, and Viva Explorer.
I think that's a new role, but let's talk about that in a minute. I'm Kevin McDonnell. I'm an MVP, Viva Explorer, and the Copilot Strategy and Modern Workplace AI lead at Avanade. We'll be releasing episodes as podcasts and on YouTube with insights from across the community and Microsoft and what the different areas of Copilot are, the impact to you and your organization, what you need to do to prepare for them or start implementing them now, and in this current age, even more about how you can extend them.
So today I'm actually going to run away and hand over to Kevin for the bulk of this because I've got a huge to-do list at work before I come and wrap up for Christmas and start enjoying the festive fun.
Okay,
But
so I can't ask about the new role yet then.
No, not yet.
We'll
not
save
yet.
that.
Yeah, we'll let's pick that up in the new year. But before I do hand over to Kevin, we thought we'd just take some time to reflect on some of the changes and progress across the Copilot ecosystem in the last year. And actually, I mean, when you think about it, Kevin, what is it, like 2 years and a month now since ChatGPT entered the collective consciousness of the world population?
Short time.
Yeah, and even when you think back to this time last year, I mean, M365 Copilot had literally only just gone GA. We had lots of announcements, but not all real products that people could use. So it's been a year.
Yeah, and I think it's been nice. And I think the big moment that I think if we're looking certainly at the M365 Copilot side was obviously the Wave 2 announcements, and the focus there was improving quality and getting more features and kind of addressing some of the, I don't know if I want to say limitations. I might get in trouble, but to me, it's limitations. It was things like Excel didn't work that well. PowerPoint was a bit disappointing initially. And I loved how Microsoft addressed that. And I think we saw that. I've seen that as a theme through the year of learning quickly, learning what it is that's not quite working and trying to adopt to that on there and renaming with it and changing SKUs.
Let's not talk about renaming either. We can pick that one up too in the new year.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's been the big thing. And if we look at other areas, we're still seeing OpenAI releasing new models. We're still seeing on the Azure side additional models as well as OpenAI being brought into it. So that they're kind of broadening the capabilities. Talks of 5.3, now 5.4, and the small language models are kind of bringing more opportunities to there. We're seeing Copilot plus PC really getting landed. So you kind of got that option of, do you go to the cloud for your Copilots or do you come local? They'll be starting to see a I don't know if a shift, but I think two different ways that you can adopt from that as well. And I think you've seen that happen through the year.
I think that the Copilot plus PCs are super interesting as well because it feels like the hardware is actually ahead of the software because we've had these devices that have been available for a little while now. And I mean, it's great that we're starting to see more options for some of the small language models and more of the things that you can do locally. But it feels like the hardware is ahead of where the software is and everything's racing to catch up. And when I think about some of the things that we might see in 2025, I think that will be a really important part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the software, it's people realizing what they can do, what the best way to do it is. When do you go local versus when do you do the cloud? I think coming outside slightly, the Microsoft ecosystem, Apple Intelligence has been there. And I am loving a lot of Apple Intelligence because it's summarizing things, but it's doing, I believe, bits of that locally, and then some things are going to the cloud. I know you can kind of ask Siri and it will
how well do you think
have
it
ChatGPT.
works? How well do you think it works?
Okay. Okay, I'll give you that. I was looking through my photos to try and do a family calendar, and the number of screenshots I've got of amusing summaries from ones. I think I counted 30. So yeah, okay. Sometimes it's a little kind of misses the theme, but the number of times I've also seen it go, do I need to look at these messages? No, that's just another WhatsApp spam group of everyone getting overexcited about something that I can look at later. So for me, is it perfect? No. Has it helped me prioritize? Yeah, completely. And I think this is also that big shift towards not just a chatbot for Copilot. It's kind of bringing things, and we, you and I have been lucky enough to see in Outlook the prioritization of emails. I love that because it's bringing the right emails to the top. I'd say 95 to 99% of the time, it's
Mm.
kind of helping me prioritize. And I think there is that shift as well of bringing it into the day to day products too.
Yeah, I do have to laugh because I've got uh like well, not intelligent. I've got like a sensor on my front and back door which is connected to our Wi-Fi.
Hmm.
So I get a push notification whenever the door's unlocked or locked, so I can easily tell if we've forgotten to lock it. And if the door status
Can I just
changes
say
a
it was
lot.
very good you said we and not your other half forgot to lock it. Well done there.
Yeah. Well, it could easily be either of us, but it's a really nice little feature from a security perspective, especially because we get paranoid about the cats escaping. So it does make me laugh because if like my other half's just got back from the shop, so I've got an alert to say the door's open, and then
Yeah,
another one to say that it's locked.
as if by magic.
And then the Apple Intelligence, if that happens quite a few times and I've not actually looked at the notifications, the Apple Intelligence will say, door status changed many times.
Yes.
So it's not
Yeah.
wrong, but it's not really helpful.
Yeah, I get that with I have it on the cat flap, and I get Smoolin and Slinky came in and out quite a lot, which it just made me laugh. But again, I'd much rather that than a bombard of like 20 different messages. So I love that kind of grouping together of things. So yeah, I take your point. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's that shift in focus that we've seen there, that move away of bringing the kind of generative AI capabilities in different ways as well. And I might talk about this a little bit more later, but I think agents as a kind of broad term for extensibility. I think it's. I don't want to eat up your time too much because I know you're going to run soon. But I think that view of kind of making it easier for people to understand. I think we spend quite a lot of time talking about extensibility. When do you create a custom copilot versus an extension, and what is a copilot? Didn't quite resonate. Whereas now I think the agent view, people kind of get that. They think of a travel agent, they think of different types of people, and they can kind of see that. I think for those who have got a slightly more understanding and thinking, it's kind of confused things because it's lumped together all these different capabilities in one big word, which is the one challenge. But I think for those who don't, which is the vast majority, I think it has helped things as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I see a lot of people just simplifying agents and talking about hyper automation.
Mm,
And I feel like, in the same way that for the last 18 months, people have had to spend time understanding what Copilot is, regardless of which Copilot it is, the fact they've had to understand what Copilot it is, we've now got a similar journey that people need to go on to actually understand what agents can do. And automation will continue to play a role because there will be some things that we can do through extending Copilot or integrating these different parts of the system together and bringing in other bits of data where it is just automation. But
mm,
actually, for people to understand that agents is where we start to introduce reasoning over the top of processes, and to almost give away a little bit of that agency. And the human in the loop obviously will still continue to be important, very much in the early stage. I think, and I know people talk about autonomous agents, but um, I think there's a trust relationship that people need to build with this
absolutely.
technology. So
Yeah.
understanding all of the different types of ways that we can build agents, and I know this is something you talk about quite a lot, Kevin, but understanding that, and then also understanding where that additional reasoning over the top of automation or that complements automation is a journey that will need to take people on.
And I think also helping people understand how to get that benefit from agents as well. It's understanding what they are, and then understanding what they matter to you, and then how those agents can talk to each other. And I think this is for those who are involved in rolling this out and doing this, the reality is going to be these things aren't going to be able to do what you want them to do for a little while now. There's going to be bits and pieces of there. There's a vision that's there 6, 9, 12, 18 months away as it kind of goes through. And I think we've got to be aware of that while also selling that kind of exciting potential. And if you don't start doing it now, you're going to get left behind. This is the kind of Netflix blockbuster type moment. There is the opportunity to be very ahead with this, and a risk with it as well. So I think that's something that people really need to kind of think and plan about as well.
Yeah. One thing I would just like to go back to is, talking about the things like the Wave 2 focus on quality and the improvements. I know that we've talked on previous episodes about the reasons why GitHub Copilot has been more well received by a greater amount of
Yeah.
people, and it's because, partly it's because it's more mature. It's been around for longer. So
Is it because they kept the same name?
Well, yeah, that makes it really easy to actually understand as well, doesn't it? But yeah, people have had access to this for longer. It's more mature as a technology, but more importantly, it's in the flow of work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have started to see much more with the focus on quality and some of the changes that have been brought into the different parts of the Copilot products is more focus on how to make it more natural to use, how to make it more automatic. Instead of people asking for a Copilot summary, it being the first thing that you see when you go to an email or
Agree.
when you open a document. And that's a really interesting trend, I think, for me, because as we start to see it become more natural and in the flow of productivity work or functional work, it will become easier for people to use. And just to bring that to life a little bit, I was talking to people who worked in an internal IT function a few days ago, and they were talking about the usage stats of Copilot, specifically M365, in their organization. And to the point you made about quality in things like Excel and PowerPoint, those things had been trailing in terms of active usage. But what they've seen over the last few weeks is actually quite a significant jump in the amount of people who are using Copilot
Really
in those products regularly, which I think is
interesting.
testament to both the improvements in the quality and output and what it's actually doing, but also the fact that it's being that when it appears when you first interact with a file that's in Excel or in PowerPoint, you're being surfaced with things that are relevant and
Mm.
prompted to do things with it in a different way, which is more intuitive and more in the flow of work.
Yeah. And I think I've told this story a few times. One of the reasons I love GitHub Copilot is exactly because it's just there. And you often don't notice it until it's turned off. And then you're like, help, help, I can't do things. And I do wonder if there's a certain element of that with some of the
Mm.
M365 Copilot and some of the others now is almost we need to turn it off and see people panic and go, hang on, I can't do these things, and demand it back to see the kind of true value and the worth of it as well. So I think that would be good. I know, and I want to let you disappear off. So I think one thing, and I'm sure we'll come back to this in either the between times of Christmas and New Year or early in the New Year, I think we'll start to see what do we think will happen. But the one big thing that we're already starting to see now is that shift to give access to more than the premium side of things with Copilot. So we've seen announced, was it yesterday, day before, that GitHub Copilot is now free within Visual Studio for a kind of limited number of usages. But for the majority of kind of day-to-day developers, that will be enough for their usage that we'll be able to get there. And we'll share links that's got full details of that. We're seeing in the message center that now the SharePoint agents and agents within M365 will be available to those without an M365 Copilot license. And there will be I'm trying not to say free, an included tier for that, and then the ability to have pay as you go on top of that. So suddenly you don't need to pay for a license for like your frontline workers who suddenly can get access to these agents that can be built into those frontline worker devices without having to have that full commitment to everyone having that $30 per user per month. You can start to think and plan against that. Now, there's lots to think about there. There's governance stories. There's how do you manage that? But as a kind of model moving towards there, we're seeing this open up to more people, and I'm really happy about that. I think it's something we've been kind of hoping for a while, to see these capabilities get to more people, and then make a choice of, do I need to get that value of going premium? Do I get enough usage from this? And I think that will be another it will be another interesting thing to keep an eye on over the next year, of how people adjust and work that out, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think introducing different models for people to be able to use and consume these technologies will definitely start to democratize access and make it easier for people to use the bits of it that are relevant for them.
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting to see what disappears as well. I think we've already seen. Some of the Microsoft things. Viva Goals has had the announcements. I think we saw last night that the what's it called, M365 search results in Bing is being deprecated as well. So we're
Yeah,
starting to
that
see
one's a particularly
Microsoft.
yeah, that's a particularly annoying one for me because I use
Yes,
that work results tab in
yeah,
Bing all of
yeah,
the time,
absolutely.
and I think when that was first announced as something that would be available within Microsoft Search, I actually thought that was really valuable. I know a lot of people
Mm.
that use it heavily, but it just shows that a lot of it, I think some of these decisions show where Microsoft are choosing to invest their money at the moment.
Yeah, I think, to my view, and I know we won't see it from Microsoft about the amount of usage. My assumption on that is that they're looking to bring people more to M365 homepage. Whereas if you go in Bing search, you don't get to that. So my suspicion is that that will be a push to people to going to, I was about to say office.com, but whatever the URL will be from that as well. So
Are you thinking there's
yes,
another URL, more URL changes, renames? Are we taking bets on how many we'll see in 2025?
I think we know there's going to be a URL change because they're moving to what's it, .ms.cloud. I've suddenly forgot what it, or .ms cloud, isn't it? I think is there is that aim to move everything towards there. So I'm hesitating and pausing because I can't remember what's being talked about publicly. I know that
Sorry,
has
that was
been talked
a
about
little,
publicly,
yeah.
and we know there will be a shift before everyone panics. All those redirects will be in place. So this is not new news. This is something that was going to be happening within there, and they're not going to suddenly turn things off. For example, I can still go to yammer.com as a natural habit because I can never remember the engage dot something on there, and that still works. So that's not going to go away before people start worrying about things on there.
Yeah. So I guess thinking about what we might see or what we might come and talk to you all about in 2025. I do think we'll continue to see more product renames, rebranding, repositioning as Microsoft get more customer feedback, more feedback from the market, from their partners, from MVPs. So that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone.
Yeah.
One of the
And
things
do
I've
feedback. I'd say
yeah,
that to everyone. Do feedback. If you don't like things, tell Microsoft. It's not a guarantee they're going to change things, but if you don't tell them, they definitely won't.
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because we had Vesa and Waldeck from Microsoft on the Copilot Fireside Chat just earlier this week. And people were asking questions of them about governance and why
Mm,
features are rolled out with the default of being on and why we don't have the governance in. But it's a really interesting catch-22 situation because we need to get the features out and people need to give that feedback back to Microsoft or to their partners who can then feed that back to Microsoft. So that Microsoft actually understand whether they've got product market fit. You know, does this thing actually make sense? Is it going to work? Is it helpful for people?
Yeah.
And then what are the gaps from a governance perspective? Because if you try to design the governance first and you end up with a product that doesn't work, that's a huge amount of investment. And it also means that they're actually slower in getting these things to market as well. So I am one of the loudest voices when it comes to things like governance and compliance and controls. But I equally understand that they actually also need to get feature feedback as well.
Yeah. And I think people got to be aware. Don't just grumble. Say why you're grumbling. Say what it matters so that Microsoft can take a decision. Because the reality is, I'm not going to upset people with this. People generally aren't very good with change and new things happening, and it kind of scares people. So the natural thing is, I want to control. I want to turn this off turn this on when I'm ready. And I get that. I absolutely get that. But if everyone did that, we wouldn't see the change happening, and Microsoft will get left behind by others who will be moving quicker. So there's got to be a balance. You've got to be clear around what the things you want are, not just, I don't want to turn this on, because that's not going to help. Microsoft's not going to take that on board from there as well. Although I do note it, I talked earlier about how Microsoft is learning. The new pay-as-you-go agents are off by default. Yes, they're not just turning these things on. They have listened to that feedback. So you have to actively go on and turn this on. And I'm really happy about that. I think that's been a good thing. And I think something that people have missed in some of the messaging. Is that because you need
to put your credit card details in?
I was trying to be nice.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, actually, no. I'm not sure it is just that, because if you've got if you've got the Syntex pay as you go, it's still not on by default. You still have to go and turn it on. So
yeah,
there is an element.
No, it wasn't
of that.
a serious comment. That was
that.
slightly facetious.
There's a part to it on that, but no, it certainly isn't just that, because if you do have it set up, you still actively have to go and say, yes, I want this. So it is good news.
Yeah, and then other things that I'd like to chat about a little bit more in the new year. I think, Kevin, I know we've talked about this already, but I think it would be really good to look at some of the competitor platforms. So we know that Salesforce, for example, their CEO is incredibly vocal about why their AI is better and all of the shortfalls and shortcomings.
Copilot's a waste of time, according to him.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of the other big players are also investing in and rolling out their own capability as well. So I think it would be really good to come and have a bit of a chat about that. And then the other thing, if people
and sorry, just quickly on that, Zoe, to anyone listening, we'd love to know what ones you'd like us to compare and have a look at. I mean, in my head, as you say, Salesforce in there, ServiceNow, Workday is the big ones. We've got Google and their kind of Gemini and Workspace offering SAP, but and we're probably not talking about necessarily Claude and the different models quite so much. We're more about implementations of those models that kind of fits that Copilot world as well.
Cases.
Yeah. And I'd love to know what we're missing.
Yeah, and then the other thing that would be really good to talk about probably early in the new year is the new Future of Work report that Microsoft published this week. It's very lengthy. We did want to talk about this today, actually, but it's 52 slides of incredibly detailed research. So in all transparency,
and it's a proper research report, isn't it? This isn't a fluffy work lab, nice, let's pick a few numbers. There's real detail in this that I think we need to not just throw Copilot and pick out the bullet points on there. I mean, we're saying that now, but when it comes to January, we might do. But no, the aim is to read it and kind of properly digest and take that on, definitely.
Brilliant. So I think Kevin, I think I'm going to leave you.
Just very quickly on that, because I'd love people to dig into it. I think it was Abram Jackson or someone put in the comment when it was out, and they were saying one of the parts of it is you shouldn't just use generative AI. It was almost kind of, we're pushing things too quickly. Don't just take it on board. And I thought that was fascinating. There obviously is content in there that might go against some of what parts of Microsoft are
Yeah,
pushing. So really interested to dig into that
yeah.
deeper.
So I was actually I was reading it before before this call. I was just trying to find the stat. So there's lots of different. I'm not obviously we're not going to dig in that. Like we said, there's a huge amount of detail, but just this one in particular really stood out to me. And they've looked at lots of different research studies as part of pulling this report together. And one of the early bullet points in this says that among 100,000 workers in Denmark who work across 11 occupations, half reported using ChatGPT, and there's a range of adoption across different roles. Younger, less experienced, higher achieving male workers led adoption. And it was the fact that this was, young, high performing men who were the ones who were driving, and that was really interesting to me.
Interesting.
I really need to dig into that a little bit more.
Wow. So it's the frat boy AI takeover.
Yeah, but this is one of the things that's potentially worrying, because we've already got gender disparity across a
Mm,
lot of industries. So will and we've already got issues with things like the missing rung for younger women who want to get into management roles where it's harder
yeah.
for them. Is this going to actually make it worse by the male led adoption of these tools that will give them that edge over the people that they're working with?
Okay. Now we need to remember to dig into this more because I'd love to understand why that feels. I don't know. Doesn't feel right. I can't see why that is. That apart from maybe how these things are being promoted
Yeah.
on
It's
this. So
interesting though, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah,
So
that's really
definitely
interesting.
go read the report, and
Mm,
we'll have an episode where we really dig into some of the info in it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Right, I'm going to let you run. I'm going to say this at the end of my bet later for everyone to switch off, but I'm going to say this to you as well. Make sure you switch off over Christmas
Believe
and
me, I
take a
will,
bit of a
and
break.
that's actually why I'm running now, so that I could do the things that I need to do and get them off my mental workload and actually start to shut down. But
Yeah,
for you,
very
Kevin,
good advice for everyone.
have a fantastic Christmas. For everybody listening, I hope you, regardless of whether you celebrate Christmas or a different holiday, or whether you just enjoy having some downtime, make sure that you have a wonderful end of the year, and we'll be back with you very soon.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, there has. Well, thank you, Kevin and Zoe, or rather, past Kevin and Zoe, because I'm going to take over solo for a little bit now. And I want to talk to you about how you can build an AI strategy with Copilot. So, the aim of this is to, you probably guessed on the show, we talk about Copilot quite a lot, but what I want to cover is that it's not just about using Copilot, it's about how do you tell people what you're using? How do you keep people aligned with that? How does that fit into how you're going to use AI strategy? How are you going to use AI within your organization itself? So let's have a little think about this. I was watching along on the video. Yes, I do have some slides. I think it's about the first time we've had slides on the show. So there's a first for everything on that. But the kind of first thing to ask is, why is it you can't just let people use the AI they want? Why can't you just let people use the different tools, grab Chat GPT and things like that? It may feel a bit like a consultant trying to push strategy. Sounds like someone trying to sell things on there. But the reality is that if you don't define a strategy, people will use all the different tools. And these tools might not have the right evaluation. They might not have the right capabilities to kind of put the appropriate security, the appropriate compliance. You could be at greater risk within that. So, what is it that a strategy can help with? Well, the first thing is that alignment. If you've got that strategy and says, this is what we want you to do, this is what we're going to do, then everyone is in that same game. Everyone's more likely to push around that. I used to speak a lot on OKRs and Viva Goals back in the days before they decided to retire it, which I'm still very sad about. Oh, actually joking on that. But one of the superpowers of AKRs is alignment, because if you can get everyone going in the same direction, then you've got people thinking the same way. So there's a real benefit of that. And in fact, then if people are doing that same thing, that pulling in the same direction, then you've reduced the risk within there. Or sorry, you haven't reduced the risk by getting everyone the same, but you can look at that same technology, that same way of doing things, and analyze the risk there. And you just have to do it that once. So if you align to Azure OpenAI, for example, then you can understand how Microsoft is using that data. It could be you decide to align to some of the Claude models, and then you understand where that data is going to be, how they're using that data to train their next models, where it resides, what are the protections in place to secure your data on there. You understand that risk, and you've done it once for the system, and it's covered. If you're taking on all the different models, all the different platforms, from Salesforce Einstein to Microsoft's Copilot to what's it, SAP's Joule within there, if you've got all these different ones, then you're having to analyze all the different bits of risk. Not saying don't do that, but it's just making sure that you have that understanding, that you have all those things to do. Because if you do need to do that, then the cost of that increases. The cost of maintaining these different items, these different tools that are within there as well, becomes higher. And actually, if you have that single platform, you can get your negotiations together with that. You can get those conversations happening, that consistent licensing that can help reduce the cost. It is worth saying, if you're only with one platform and you're completely wedded to that, then you may be stuck there. If you're trying to negotiate and have a debate around the best deals, you're kind of hamstrung, because they know that the amount of work it would be to unpick from that. So there is a certain amount to consider with having maybe a couple of options within that. But in the same way that you may use Microsoft 365, you don't want to be partly using that and partly using Google's Workspace, because your cost is going to be much larger by taking on adoption there. Yes, you have that flexibility, but how much you have spent on balancing both of those at the same time kind of outweighs some of that as well. So thinking about how you can focus on one to see that cost reduction is uh, really powerful as well. Moving on, the other one is future proofing. So if you have got that single platform, then you can look at understanding what their models are, understanding what's happening next, having that engagement and being able to plan ahead for that. The more different things you do against that, the more painful it can be. And I think also, more importantly, with that strategy, you can plan for what's going to happen in the future. You can think about what that need is within there. If you're just using all these different ones and not putting things in place, then you haven't thought about, yes, this tool might do it now, but that tool's going to have that capability plus more in the future. So really understanding not just what the here and now is, but what the either the definite plans or the likely trajectory of things will be. Is this organization that you're aligning with uh, constantly improving? Are they going to be first to the game? Are they going to focus on being stable and giving you the governance, which may be more suitable for you? So, planning that strategy can help you be very clear on why you're doing those things. And one thing that's almost got missed on the slides there is capability. Do you have the internal understanding to be able to do these things? Do you have the training, or do you have the ability to ramp up that training? So if you're a very Microsoft aligned house, then people are probably aligned to using Azure. And if you suddenly decide to bring in maybe plain OpenAI or some of the Claude services, there's a different way of thinking that you need to train people up and thinking about within there. So working out the strategy for how you're going to get people engaged, and not just from the back end point of view, not just looking at those models, but also thinking about how the end user is going to do this as well. So think about those different areas. And there's a few steps I like to think about when you're building this strategy. And the first one is identify the need. Because as someone who loves a good gadget, who loves to bring things in for the sake of it, I do think it's important, especially for kind of large well, actually for any organization, you need to think about what the need is, because that will help define your strategy. Are you looking this as a broad brush to improve productivity? Are you wanting to increase innovation? Are you wanting to be seen to be innovative? And as a kind of techie focused person, this is kind of tricky. It's the reality is sometimes it's not just what it can do, but how you're perceived to be there in the market. So that marketing viewpoint, I do think plays into it. It can come along to that as well. It's not always everything, but is certainly some of that needs. Are you perceived as being an AI first organization in there, or are you perceived as maybe being a little bit more cautious and risk averse within there? Thinking about what the need of what you want to get across is will also steer towards what tools you need. And talking of those tools, given that you have a need, whether it's a very specific one, or as we're looking at kind of strategy for the organization, you're looking at a broader need for that. What are the tools that can deliver that? And that means you need to get a bit of an understanding of what those options are out there. We mentioned earlier that we're going to try and do a show in the new year where we look beyond Copilot and look at what the alternatives are. And you need to make sure you do that, whether you are looking at that seriously to say, I don't want to use Copilot, or maybe Azure OpenAI, a particular element, I want to use something else, or whether you just want to understand what the options are and what the differences are. You should understand what those tools can deliver. And even looking within the Copilot space, should you build your own thing with Azure OpenAI? Should you make an agent? Should you use out of the box services as well? So thinking about those different options for what you need is very important. And then going back to that capability I talked about, identifying the required resources to be able to do that. Are there people in house that you can train up? Do you need to bring in a partner or hire new people to be able to do this? Thinking about how that aligns to the strategy, and that could be again for implementing. It could be for training the staff. Friend of the show, Sarah Fenner, is doing a beautiful amount of training around Microsoft Copilot and M365 Copilot and that world as organizations look to kind of gear people up towards that. So think about what is the resource that you have, what do you need, what's the gap within there, how do you work that out? And that then connects into assessing the value. When you'll bring these tools in, they're going to cost, whether it's that license cost and the kind of upfront implementation, or whether it's that training, that change in adoption. All these things are going to add a cost to it. But what is the flip side? What are the benefits? You could say, what is the return on investment? I'd always challenge people to look beyond that as well, not to ignore ROI, not to ignore the fact that you need to look at the monetary value of these things, but to say there can sometimes be more than that. What is the impact to your organization? What is the impact to the staff? And yeah, I know you could say if people are less effective, then there's less money, so it's all down to ROI. But it's kind of working back, and I do think that's a valid point, but it's how do you get to a real way of assessing that, and it's measuring those values on there. I always love that kind of idea of what happens if you take this away from people. I talked about this earlier with GitHub, of the idea of turning it off and seeing the impact. How would people feel if you took these tools away from them? And that really helps to play into that broader value as well. You need to think, I talked about the risk, but you need to understand the responsible use, the compliant use. How are people going to use it? Are they using it in the right way? Are they trained to know they can use it in the right way? Is the tool working towards that? Will it help you kind of write something inappropriate or draw images that are inappropriate? Does it have that right level of control to be able to ensure that? Are you sure you're aware of what compliant use looks like? From things like the EU AI Data Act or GDPR, or even in financial services and pharmaceuticals, you have your own compliance needs. Are you meeting those, and does the tool meet it natively as well? Next one is giving you to find a strategy, working out how you actually deliver on that. What does it look like? Just coming up with a load of ideas and saying we should do this, we should do that doesn't actually do anything. So how do you deliver against that strategy? And I think linked to that, the final one is how do you measure that success? How do you say this is what we are trying to achieve? Here is a definition that we have achieved that. Saying things like, we have increased our productivity by 50%. That's lovely. How did you measure that? How do you define productivity? And I think, especially for knowledge workers, it's kind of tricky to say exactly what that productivity boost is. So you might not be looking pure numbers. You might be looking at a few indicators that suggest you have got to that point as well. So it's thinking about those different steps within there. And given that, how do you decide from all those different factors, from all those different things that are going to be in your strategy? These are the things you need to think about. So, what are the tools that you're going to bring to that? What are the cool gadgets, the cool ideas that you're going to bring forward? And for me, why is that Copilot? So, one of the things, and I think I've spoken about this on the show before. I know those who see me speak this year, I almost always use a similar slide. And for those who can't see this, at the moment on the screen are three concentric circles, slightly aligned to the bottom from there, in slightly different colors. And they're kind of bigger, medium, smaller within there. And next to the big one is a big sign that says agents for all. And this could be co-pilots for all. And so thinking about those different types of ways you use that co-pilot, use that agent, the first one are those services that can be used by everyone. That agent like M365 Copilot, or even just the Microsoft Copilot that comes with the web. Um, I promised I wasn't going to go here. Whatever it is called today within there. The artist formerly knows as Bing Chat Enterprise within there. These things are available to everyone, and everyone can make use of those. But then we have that layer below, that agents by role, where you have specific roles within there, such as tools like the Copilot for Viva Insights, that's really geared towards those HR folks. Some of the Dynamics ones, which are kind of aligned either with maybe finance, and obviously Copilot for Finance there could be the service help. So you've got the Dynamics ones there, plus Copilot for service, you've got Copilot for sales. There are particular roles within an organization that become more suited towards those different ones. It's not for everyone, and you wouldn't license it up for everyone. You'd license it for those who would need it. And that kind of fits those agents by role that you can build out. And then that final one, that specific build out of an agent for a particular scenario. And I do intentionally here just say agent, because there's not so much of an opportunity where a co-pilot is just for a particular scenario. I guess, and why I'm hesitating slightly, you could argue that Copilot for security fits that scenario. It's dealing with um, the kind of security events and things like that. Although I think that's more role than scenario. So you've got that kind of focus there is generally building something out to fit something that you need to do within your organization. And each of these different types can also be supported by looking at it from a different perspective of, are you creating this generative AI capability to help your customer experience? And that's not necessarily building it for customers, but the people like service, like sales, operations that are servicing the customer, that it can help them be more effective? Or are you looking at this to be about employee experience, where you're looking at it more around helping employees be more effective? And then that subset of the employees, the specialist within there. Again, this kind of comes back a little bit more to that Copilot for security, or even your kind of full code developers, your code first developers could be considered within that specialist view from there. And if you layer together some of the co-pilots For those who are watching on the video, can see this slide in there. You can see that you've got those different ones that I've kind of talked about primarily within here. You've got that Copilot for service that fits that Copilot's by role, but is focused on customer service. You've got things like, let's see, we've got Copilot in Fabric, which I've kind of got between the employee experience and specialist, because you will get some benefits of like the Power BI, Copilot in Power BI that can be used by anyone and chat within there with a license, obviously. And then you've got the kind of capabilities of building your data and working with your data that sits a little bit more in the specialist side of things there. So do check out the video if you are just listening. I'm not going to try and talk about all these, but I do have that single view on there to think about those different copilots. Now, given those, I talked quite a lot about copilots there, but also touched on the idea of agents. And I think this fits a very important thing to consider is how do you align those tools to what your needs are? Because you can go to Microsoft, you can pay your money for a license or get one of the ones that are included, such as the Microsoft Copilot, and you could use that. And yes, there is cost for adoption and change that I talked about, making sure people can technically use it. There's probably a little bit of turning things on that you need to do in tech evaluation, and certainly some governance to sort out your digital core. But it's about enabling what's there. And that could meet all of your requirements. But more likely, you're going to be looking at 80-90% of the capability there will meet what you need. But sometimes you need a bit more. You need to be able to extend it beyond that. And that's where that ability to extend Copilot with agents that allows you to bring in your own systems, your own data, whether it's other third-party ones like ServiceNow and Salesforce, whether it's bespoke systems within there. You can bring that alignment into the Copilot interfaces themselves. And that's not just M365 Copilot. That includes the others that come through from that world as well. So some of the dynamics ones that is certainly possible to bring that capability forward from there and make those things happen. So you can think about that extension of it. You can also look at your business processes and automating some of the elements there. So bringing forward your workflows that take place from there and bringing generative AI into this. And when I first started thinking about this, it was kind of how can you bring Gen AI into Power Automate? We're now seeing those autonomous agents where it's not just about triggering an agent by typing in a chat bot. It's about an event happening, whether that's an email coming in, whether it's you dropping a file into a SharePoint list, whether it's an update to your ERP or CRM systems. You can trigger those processes to kick off. And then finally, and this is one for Microsoft to really take on board, especially the M365 Copilot team. There are times that you want to build a completely custom standalone agent that isn't integrated into the different areas on there. So this could be the standalone agent. It could be something for your customers that you put out on the website, but it could be there are reasons that you want this not to be connected to M365 within there as well. And that's your custom agent that comes through from there as well. Now, I've started talking about copilots and talking about agents. I guess one of the questions that come up, and we did touch a little on this earlier, is what is an agent? So, to my view, it's something that's autonomous or possibly semi-autonomous. It could still have I think there isn't that importance to the human of the loop in the loop, or it could be it triggers one thing, but without generative AI, a trigger happens, and then there's some AI that works in there with it as well. So it is some element of automation to there, and it will use AI. And generally, if we're talking about agents, we're probably looking mostly at generative AI, but not necessarily. What it should do is enhance your business processes. Now, whether that's business meaning your organization as a whole, that is absolutely some of those business processes, but that could be at a team or department level, or it could be your own processes as an individual to make you more efficient, more productive in the way that you work as well. So an agent is there to help with all those different things. And there's a lovely slide from Microsoft that talks about the spectrum of agents. So you have agents that are focused on retrieval, of grounding data, summarizing, bringing things together for you. You've then got ones that are more task focused, that will actually take action when asked, and they can kind of automate flows. And these are ones fantastic for repetitive users. But you also have these autonomous agents, and this gets very interesting from here. These will operate independently, but they will work together with each other. You can have these to orchestrate other agents. They can learn. They can know when to, excuse me, they can know when to bring in other agents as well, and to escalate to humans at that point. So this is kind of where a lot of this capability, and again, we talked about this earlier, is starting to move to. When we talk about agents, these autonomous agents is what a lot of people were thinking about initially. The reality is what things can happen right now are not all there as well. So these are something that's starting to evolve and starting to bring some magic from there. Now, talking about that starting to evolve, one of my favorites kind of little squiggly lines is the hype cycle that Gartner has. And it has that kind of initial innovation trigger, that nice new one. And the hype cycle is a way for Gartner to kind of tell people where they perceive these different areas of technology are in terms of the reality around them. And that initial kind of growth that you see, that peak up as it goes up, on there is the expectations of what some of these tools can do. And that will hit a peak of inflated expectations, at which point people are expecting it to be able to do more than it actually can. And at some point, they'll start trying to use them and go, oh, I thought it was going to make a cup of tea for me and give me a nice chocolate hobnob while I'm sitting here. You mean an agent can't do that? No, it's digital only. At least the ones we're talking about. I know there are some robot ones, but I'm pretty sure they can't make a good cup of tea and get you a chocolate hobnob. So the reality of that expectation starts to drop off that cliff towards that trough of disillusionment in there, where kind of what you expected it to do and what it can actually do are different things. And that will generally not bottom out to the kind of nothing, but you will see that trough of disillusionment. But as it hits the bottom, you start to go, well, there is value in this. And it moves towards that slope of enlightenment where you have the reality of what it can do, and aligning those things of what it can do with what you need, what can be aligned to your business objectives. And that really is that plateau of productivity where it levels out and goes, right, I know what I wanted. I know it's maybe not perfect, but it's getting me some real value and I'm liking this. Now, for those watching video, you would have seen this already, and I hope it's large enough for you to notice, but you will see from here that generative AI enabled virtual assistants are the ones heading closest on here towards the trough of disillusionment. And this was the 2024 hype cycle for generative AI supplied by Gartner. And they are kind of saying that, well, actually, the kind of reality of where people is, people are kind of seeing that these can't do everything, and it's heading towards that trough of disillusionment. And you may think this is the perfect time to go, no, no point us investing any time on this. No point looking at this. But I disagree. This is your opportunity to prepare, because you want to be able to take those through to that plateau of productivity to get the value of these. So go and find out what those challenges are. Go and sort out things for that, and consider think about those considerations for an agent as well. And I've got 6 things I want you to think about for an agent. There are the triggers. I talked earlier with Zoe. We said the big evolution we're going to see this year is that move away from pure chatbots and seeing how generative AI fits in the day-to-day flow of work. And that means there's triggers. So that could be you looking at something, it could be a document coming in, an email coming in, I don't know what else. And that's what I'm looking forward to hearing is what people see this. What are the triggers for agents coming in and doing things from there? Because that will change and that will help bring things into the flow of work. And alongside that, you need to think about the creators. So, who is it that's going to create these agents? If we look back 6, 9 months, creating an agent was very much a pro code capability using tools like AutoGen, Semantic Kernel. I think Crew.ai, I've heard a few things about on there. There's others, non Microsoft ones looking at that, but very much it was looking at Python, looking at C Sharp, JavaScript within there to create these capabilities. But then Copilot Studio came along with its agents, obviously formerly called bots, formerly called Copilots, formerly called PVAs, etc. I won't go too far back with that. But suddenly power users had that ability to create things. And yes, there may be some limitations to that. It may be that it didn't allow you to index your documents to quite the degree you wanted to, but it gave you a really good start and a really powerful way of doing things. And you just needed to understand a bit about the kind of power platform tools to be able to make use of that. But what we're seeing an evolution even further now is toward end user agents. We've seen with SharePoint agents where you can go in, click a few files or a few folders, in fact, up to 20, click on create an agent, and you can start talking about the contents of those files and give that out to people. And that is something that even your gran can do probably, that can go in there and open these things up. Your granddad could be trained into this. There is that ease for everyone to be able to go and see some benefit. Possibly need a little bit of understanding of how to write a prompt for those, but it opens up to a lot more people. So the creators of those, of who's creating that agents will evolve as well. And you need to plan ahead for these as well. You need to plan ahead, even within that, for those different creators to think about how do you keep human in the loop? How do you make sure that there is a boundary to what these things can do so you have control over what these agents do, that there are these pieces in there? And there's a certain element where there is the governance needed for this, there's the central capability, but there is also that focus on individuals knowing when to do that. When do I want to get a notification and do something about it versus just letting my little agent carry on its merry little way on there? So thinking about that human in the loop, that you have the confidence and trust within for it to continue. Next thing I think about is generative capabilities. Do you actually need Gen AI? I was presenting on this recently, and there's a big picture of regex is not AI. There are times that you just need something to match a few patterns or say, if this, then that, if this, then that. That doesn't need generative AI from within there. That's just a plain flow, a workflow that can pick up from that. So making sure you're using that generative capabilities where you need it. And even if you are using the right level, so putting the right model within there that can do the right thing and can use the right amount of power. So what I mean by that is that if you use the very latest model, there is a cost around that, and there is a higher usage of power within those data centers, which will hit your sustainability. And you need to think about that as well, to think about what is the cost, not just to organizations, but to the planet and things on there as well. And I was neatly challenged on this at ESPC. They were speaking a few weeks that I didn't talk about the sustainability impact of these. And I do genuinely think that's something we need to be talking around there. And I think as a simplest level is where you're using this AI, make sure you're using it effectively, because that will use more power and use things unnecessarily. So making sure you are bringing value to your organization and to the planet with the use of generative capabilities. And thinking about the autonomy, how will this work on its own? What are the boundaries you need to set? This kind of goes hand in hand with human in a loop to a degree, but I think it's more specific to say, when do you want this to do things on its own versus when do you want to put that block within there? When do you want to put that stop to say, nah, that's enough within there as well? And then the final one when it comes to agents is scale. And by this, I don't just mean scale in terms of will this work for one user versus 100? And I do mean that to a degree. You need to think about what that's going to use from a technical capability. You know, are you using SaaS platform as a service that allows it to scale there? But more, it's about what happens when one user uses it, when 100 users, when 1,000 use it. Does it change the way it behaves within there? Will it work from there? And more importantly, when you have one agent versus 10 versus 1,000, is it obvious how these things connect together? Do they talk to each other effectively? Is it obvious that when you have 5 agents called Salesforce agent, that maybe one's more finance focused, one's more CRM focused, one's more HR focused, etc.? How do you have that understanding of what to use when? That becomes really important as you scale these different things out from there as well. And also, one of the ones that I picked in when I was at ESPC, I had a massive screen behind me, and I had this nice view of it, trying to talk about this kind of end user created agents, and then making use of modules and different blocks, and they look like a huge Eye of Sauron. So try and have that in your head, because in the middle is the end user who will use agents or maybe do a little bit of expanding, selecting documents. Then outside that, you've got those power users, and they're going to do a little bit more, and they'll have different types of knowledge they want to use. They may have different actions they can build into that, have different uses of prompts. And so you don't need those specialists I talk about necessarily building full agents. They can build those capabilities. They can build those connectors to those knowledge sources. They can build prompts that other people can use that you can make available to there, and they can bring that capability for there. So think about that scalability of how am I going to reuse these things? How am I going to have different agents, but they're different in terms of the instructions they get, not the data they're using, not the actions they take within there. And that will allow the scalability of this, because you can test those modules once and know it will work across the different agents within there as well. And, I've only just thought about this testing as well within that scale. You need to be able to test these different things, test how they will interact. And again, this fits within the autonomy, making sure you're comfortable with that. So how do you go about doing some of these things? Well, our lovely friend Simon Owen talks a lot about this, and Zoe, if you ever listen to this, we must get him on the show to come and chat about this. But it's thinking about your center of excellence and your center for enablement. Your center of excellence is where you build that capability. You have people who will help govern your AI focus within there. You have all the different tools within that will make sure it happens, that people know they can go there and get what they need out of it in terms of making requests for new ones. You've got that central real speciality within there. Your center for enablement is how you enable people to use those agents, to know what is possible. Your adoption and change that says, did you know these things are out there? Did you know that capabilities within that? And also then, if you're looking at those power users and those end users, how do they know to create those things? How have you enabled them to do things themselves? And that can go all the way to those code first developers who will want accelerators. They don't want to build everything from scratch, to learn from things you've done before. All fits within that center for enablement, celebrating success within there. And I'm not going to dive into this too much. Simon Owen has a fantastic blog. If you look up Simon Owen Microsoft or Simon Owen Avanade, you'll find links to his blog post on there that he talks about. We'll put in the show notes as well in there. So thinking about these two things is something we will certainly come back to as well. And these are key to not just building that strategy that I talked about way back in the beginning of this kind of chat within there, but also thinking about how you can actually make that strategy real for people, how you can enable people to make use of this, how you can build that capability through a center of excellence to actually deliver on that. Your COE and your C4E are those two things that enable that strategy to happen. You build that strategy to work out what it is you want to achieve. You build these to make sure that that strategy can happen together as well. So, no, Zoe, at this point, so I'm going to say the goodbye. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. Thank you all of you who've listened to Copilot Connection this year, whether it's been through the podcast, whether it's those who've joined a couple of our Copilot Fireside chats. If you go to copilotfireside.chat, you can sign up for those. We have the incredible and beautiful Donna Sarker coming up in January. So really looking forward to that. And that is not recorded. So sorry if you miss it. You have missed it. But we have that on purpose to make sure that you can actually come forward and listen to that, and we can have an honest conversation with there. So sign up for that one, bring your questions, and if you have questions for us, send them through social media, contact us directly. We would love to hear from you more about that, what you've liked this year, what you haven't liked on there. We'd love to hear that as well. What you should do more of, what you should do less of. Yes, I have been doing a retrospective recently, so that is fresh in the brain for that. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love you to tell other people if you have enjoyed these episodes, share it with them. Share it in your internal communities, in Viva Engage, share it within your teams, within your teams, within your teams. I think I managed to get to 4 teams at one point when I was talking to someone in Microsoft, but go out and share and let people know about this. And do you know, as it's Christmas, I'd like you to take a break, but one little present, if you want to get us a present, is to go and give us a review. Go on to iTunes, go on to, I think you can do it in Spotify as well, as various places where you're listening to your podcast. Give us a rating and just give us a lovely message there to say how much you've enjoyed the show as well. But then switch off, let your brain relax, have a fantastic holiday break. Maybe listen to Copilot Connection to let you relax on there. But otherwise, we will see you and you'll hear from us in the new year. Have a great time and thank you very much. Bye bye.